Right, greetings. Welcome back to the Philosophy Club here in Bretet, in the middle of France. It's beautiful at the moment, April. We've got, good weather been happening, so we've been taking the opportunity to do some, decorating and stuff. And the village is looking beautiful. We went for a walk today. All the flowers are out. It's very much spring-like. And let's hope we haven't seen any more snow. That should be the end of the snow for the season. So, little summary, what have I been up to? So we've been busy here in Little Bretet. I've been doing my duties as coordinating this centre. I'm working every day on the commentary on St Matthew's Gospel, which is going really well. I'm hoping to finish that by my birthday, which is the 8th of May. It should be out and published by then. It's really an intensive work, 800 pages to spell check, but it's going quite well. And I went to collect my recent guest, a new workaway who's come from Germany, from Indonesia. Do you want to say hi?
Hello.
Kafa is originally from Indonesia and came here 3 years ago, in fact, which was great fun. We were busy doing stuff in August that year and has come back now, so that's exciting. I've been busy with the Liberal Democrats here in France. I'm on their executive committee. We had a meeting, and I'm in the middle of setting up a Liberal Democrat philosophy forum, which I initially set up in Wales when I lived there. I think this voice is quite important, a voice of moderation and decency, truth in politics and all that. And I've just discovered today that as a Canadian citizen, I'm entitled to vote in the Canadian elections, which are coming up on the 28th of April. I've just got in time to get my ballot in. I will be voting, therefore. It's my civic duty as a Canadian citizen. I'm also a UK citizen. I've got both. And so I will be voting, not giving any two secrets away here, to support the voice of moderation and reason in Canadian politics, i.e. the current Prime Minister, Mark Carney, who is standing up against Trump's madness and his threats against Canada, which is just shocking to any right-thinking person to me. When Mark Carney was governor of the Bank of England, he lived in London, obviously, and I was working in quite a splendid Anglican all-girls school called St Mary's in Caen at the time, teaching philosophy and religion. And I don't know how I heard, but I heard that Mark was having trouble finding a school suitable for his daughters. So I suggested to our headmistress that she ought to write to him and suggest he come to us, because we are actually one of the best schools in Britain for young girls of quality who want a really, really good education. Like a sort of mini for girls, if you want. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if the headmistress ever wrote to him. But if so, and he sent his girls there, I'm sure they were very happy. They wouldn't have got me because I was only there for a year, sadly. But I hope Mark Carney wins this election and is able to stand up against the nonsense of Trump, which is seriously mentally disturbed, in my opinion. And his followers, like this Green woman, they're all just mentally disturbed. Yes, it's very sad. Anyway, as Canadians, we have to stand up to this. And I noted in a speech Mark Carney gave that he is taking steps because the USA is flooding guns into Canada. The crime rates are going up. That's one thing that needs stopping. Because you can just buy guns off the street in America, in the USA. There's no real legislation to prevent people walking into a shop and buying guns, which they're then shipping into Canada. I mean, the USA obviously wants to destabilise Canada and turn it into a mini USA. The other thing is they're flooding the country with drugs. So contrary to what Trump was saying, which is that drugs are coming in from Canada into the USA, it's actually the other way round. And he quoted the figures, I've researched it. I mean, fentanyl and stuff is flooding into Canada from the USA, not vice versa. So Mark will take steps to ensure that doesn't happen. And when I nursed in Canada, I nursed people who worked in the Canadian Armed Forces and even an ex-Canadian mounted policeman. They're quite intelligent and they can stop this USA nonsense. And then the third thing Mark Carney's quite good on is he's very disturbed that the American social media, they should be called anti-social media, giants like X, are flooding Canada's airwaves with racist and populist anti-government nonsense, and he's going to try and take steps to prevent that. I think X should be banned from Canada completely, 100%. I also think it should be banned from Europe and the UK. It's become a racist dissemination tool for, mentally challenged, people that can't actually string two sentences together, so they just do a little twit. I call them the twits. So I think, anyway, I think this is a safe pair of hands if he gets back in as Prime Minister. And I'll be doing my bit to help that. We've been having fun. We had a music club here last night. It's good to play music, also in the little village of Betet. This is the Musée des Muses, and one of the muses is Terpsichore, the muse of music. And it's nice to see the place come alive with music. And it was the full moon last night, so that was great. What about the state of the world more generally? Well, I noted with interest that Macron, the president of France, is making noises that he's about to recognise the Palestinians as an independent state. I think this is long overdue. Obviously, it should have been done. I've been campaigning with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for the Middle East for ages. And I set up a project called ICEPS, International Commission for Establishing a Palestinian State. I mean, people all talk about a two-state solution. Fantastic, that's what we need. But to have two states solution, you actually need two states. And at the moment, we've only got one, which is Israel. And Palestine are sort of crammed into a bombed-out ghetto in Gaza and still being bombed. And then in the West Bank, their homes are being attacked. And so that's all got to stop. We've actually got to enable and empower a Palestinian state to come into being. I know that Jeremy Corbyn in the UK, an MP, has got 60 MPs to sign a request for a Chilcot-style commission into why Britain has been giving weapons to Israel to bomb and kill and wound, innocent Palestinians by the tens of thousands, without it ever being approved or passed in Parliament. It's like they've totally bypassed democracy in Parliament. So what Jeremy Corbyn is saying is that there should be a commission of inquiry, like the Chilcot Commission, which was set up to investigate the problems of the Iraq War, which was also another illegal escapade by British and American armed forces with no legal justification, in my opinion. And that was chaired by Lord Chilcot, who actually went to Brighton College, which is the school I went to in Britain when I was a young lad. And he was a good man, I think, but a bit weak. So the thing is, the Jeremy Corbyn 60 MPs have all signed this. The trouble is the government is not going to authorise that. They will not create a Chilcot-style commission because they don't want to have to answer questions. So my advice to those 60 MPs is just set it up anyway. Do it anyway. Use Parliament under your own authority as a group of MPs to hold commission-type meetings. That is totally within their remit and within their rights and responsibilities as MPs. They won't have any funding. Well, you don't need funding. You just do it and invite people to come and give testimony. And some whistleblowers will come, and you have freedom of parliamentary speech in there, and you can film it, and you can do a public service to find out what on earth is going on in the UK government. I mean, has the UK government been totally taken over by one side of the equation, i.e. Israeli interests, and completely ignoring the rights of the Palestinians? Well, we need to find out. It certainly looks like that. And this has always been a problem in British politics going right back, even to the 19th century, when Disraeli was very, very much in favour of, I mean, he would love the creation of Israel and all that it stands for. I don't think he would approve of what they have been doing with their remit under the Balfour Declaration, because the Balfour Declaration authorised an Israeli state to come into being as long as it didn't damage, hurt, wound, penalise the existing inhabitants, i.e. the Palestinians. And I think Disraeli was a reasonably moderate and intelligent person who would be shocked at all this. And certainly Gladstone would be, because Gladstone, the Liberal on the other side, was very suspicious of what was going on in the Middle East. So anyway, we need to have that inquiry, and my advice to my colleagues is just set it up anyway. I co-chaired 30 meetings in the UK Parliament, House of Lords, with the support of friendly Lords and MPs, and you can do it. I'd be happy to come and give testimony to if you set it up. But don't expect the government to give you a green light. They won't give you a green light. No, they'll tap your phones, they'll interfere with your post, and make sure you're not followed by cars with blazing headlights is all my advice would be. Because truth has become a sort of rare commodity nowadays. Shocking, but true. The other thing I want to say is that I'm also pleased that the Prime Minister, or the President or Prime Minister of Indonesia has sent an envoy, his foreign minister, to Turkey and to the Holy Land to try and say, well, we Indonesia, would be happy to have some Palestinian refugees, give them a temporary shelter whilst Gaza's being rebuilt or whatever. Because Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world. It has millions of Muslims who are really upset about what's been going on in Palestine. And they feel that's a charitable thing they could do. Of course, other people will feel, no, if you let them go to Indonesia, they'll never get back, because Israel will then prevent that. So, it's a difficult thing. But what I would say, and I have a letter in process to the people in Indonesia behind that project, is great idea, but hold on that. Please, let's work and create a Truth and Reconciliation Commission for the Middle East, which I've set up, so we can actually get the Israelis and the Palestinians and the Turks and everyone else, and the Canadians who could provide a peacekeeping force, maybe, if Israel pulls out of Gaza. I'm sure we Canadians could do that. I believe Palestine should join the Commonwealth. I've spoken to the ambassador of Palestine to the UK, who said, yes, that's what we want to do. So that would be an independent Palestinian state, a member of the Commonwealth. And let's do that by supporting the work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for the Middle East. And that's something the Indonesian government could do, practically. We're ready to rock here. And for that we need high-level meetings, we need venues booked, we need a place in Geneva, we need wherever. And then it's partly private, so there's private meetings, but then there would be like press releases and agreed statements would be issued and stuff. So it would be sort of private, secret diplomacy plus some public diplomacy. So that's all quite exciting and long overdue, really, because my dear poor people in Palestine and Gaza are still being attacked and bombed. I mean, for no rational reason apart from sheer ignorance, I would say. Ignoring human rights, ignoring international law, and ignoring all morality. Now, of course, I have Israeli friends. I have, I try and see it from all sides. I have Israeli friends saying, no, they attacked us. It's their fault. They have tunnels. They've put all the money we used to give them for aid into weapons and tunnel building. And the only way to do this is to destroy every last Hamas person and achieve total and absolute military victory. We've been using minimum force, quote unquote. That's what they say. But, the trouble is that argument, which is the official line of the IDF and its spokespeople, is proven to be false. Most recently, in this last week, a Palestinian Red Crescent team went to an incident. They were called to help some wounded people, and they themselves were then fired on by the Israeli army. And it was filmed just by chance by one of the people who went, and in his last moments he's praying, and it picks it up on the camera. He was killed, 15 people were killed in cold blood, medical aid workers. And the Israelis can't deny it, they can't sort of pretend it's not happening. These stories are horrendous, what's been going on. And it all has got to come out. There's a wonderful line in, I think it might be the Gospel of St. John, where he says that, everything that is in the dark has to come into the light. The basic theological idea of this is that all the forces of darkness and evil that use lies to cover up their misdeeds, they have to now be exposed. And that's what we can do, is truth-telling. And that's the point of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for the Middle East. Okay, anyway, there's my little introduction. It's been a busy week here in Betet. Any comments, questions, or observations?
It's been a bad week and ended really bad as well for the peace in the world, both in Palestine as well as in Ukraine. This morning, I think, or was it yesterday morning? Was this morning?
Yeah.
34 people killed
in a missile attack on the hometown of Zelensky. Yeah, it's a deliberate provocation, really, by Putin. Yeah, I thanks for reminding me. I did see that, and I was shocked, and I've posted stuff
on a Palm Sunday.
Is it Palm Sunday? Yes, because it's next today. Weekend that is Easter. Yeah.
Palm Sunday today, and
Easter's
and the Russians are supposedly to be Orthodox Christians, and that's not a very Christian thing to do.
Well, I think Putin and his cronies just wear that as a kind of nationalist badge, just like Trump and his Christian nationalists wear it as a nationalist badge. These people are not Christian. In fact, I think they should be excommunicated. These people that do that kind of stuff. I mean, I'd appeal to the head of the Orthodox Church worldwide, Patriarch Bartholomew. Get the old books out. How do you excommunicate people that are just thoroughly evil? Do it, because that at least is something one can do. Because they're waging occult warfare on all people of right thinking. So what do you do with them? You excommunicate them. And yes, but thanks, yeah. Okay, any other comments?
No, I think maybe I'll comment on my president's idea of taking thousands refugees from Palestine.
Yeah.
I think I'm not really into this idea, because I believe that, as you said, maybe the best thing we can do is support them, not by taking them away from their land, but supporting peace and sending help to their land so they can stay and keep Israel away, because if we take them away from their land,
they'll never
get back, and it's just helping Israel's mission to clear up the land faster.
Israel and Trump.
Yeah. They do seem to be in bed together. I mean, we always knew Netanyahu and Trump were best buddies, but now we're seeing it, in real time. Also, they did destroy the Indonesian hospital in Gaza, didn't they? Was that something you knew about in Indonesia? Mm-hmm. And people were not happy about that, were they?
Yeah, no, of course.
I mean, you're working in a hospital in Germany, you're training as a nurse.
I mean, hospital, why would they attack hospital?
Well, they claimed it was because Hamas were in the underground tunnels, but...
According to IDF, I believe that every hospital in Gaza, every medical institution in Gaza seems to churn out Hamas warriors, so they have to.
I just don't believe
it.
I mean, I just don't believe it.
No, of course it's
and there's no evidence
sheer
that's
nonsense.
been produced. It seems to be mendacity has become the default position of Netanyahu and his government. Well, the world can see through this, and I noted that Indonesian hospital going up. I mean, it's just shocking. And this is cruelty beyond belief, to attack what should be inviolable places, and also schools and universities.
What can you expect from people that fire thousands and thousands of rounds into ambulances with flashing lights, blue flashing lights, clearly.
Sure. No, I mean, it was absolutely shocking. This
Yeah.
most recent thing this
Yeah.
week. Yeah. I'm sad for the Israeli soldiers that are doing this because they've been so dehumanized
Yeah.
and traumatized by their own narrative that is played out all the time in the Israeli media, that they think that's justifiable, because they've dehumanized the Palestinian as a sort of animal, and have lost, in doing that, they lose their own humanity. I have friends who are Palestinian, I have friends who are Israeli, and they're both amazing groups of people. And it's sad. I used to be in London in the 90s. I was involved in discourse, talks between Israelis and Palestinians at a high level, with my friend Saida Nasabi and Harold Pinter and other people. And we were optimistic. That's when the Oslo Peace Accords happened. And we believed that, the Palestinians are some of the most incredibly intelligent people I've ever met on the planet. They have more PhDs per head in Palestine than anywhere else in the world apart from Israel. They're also super intelligent. And what really upsets me is why can't they actually be intelligent enough morally to work out a peace treaty? And that's what I think we should get the Indonesian government and other friendly governments to campaign for, and to put pressure on Turkey to get that going, But anyway, thanks for that. Yeah. Okay, look, now we move on. Let's look at our periodic table, because this is part of a long-term project to try and get all the religions and all the philosophies of the planet talking to each other and learning about each other instead of blowing each other up, So have you chosen one, sir?
I've been doing a curious thing again. 105 today.
UFOs and cosmology and stuff.
That's
UFO. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Good. Right, what one are you going to go for?
I'll choose randomly.
Okay.
So I think I'll go with this humanism skepticism.
Okay.
75.
Right, excellent. Okay, so we'll start with the UFO thing, number 105. This is technically called a new religious movement. So in the scholarship of religious traditions, people look at, all the established religions like Islam, Judaism, Christianity. But over the last decades, a whole bunch of scholars have realised there's new religious movements as well, and they're interesting and should be studied. And some of my colleagues specialise in that. I've given lectures on new religious movements as well. And one of them is this whole thing about, UFOs and aliens, that people are saying that this world, this planet is just one planet among a whole sea of intelligent planets, and that they're in contact with us. So I've met people personally who've made that claim, who can channel, which is their word for it, information from intelligent, super intelligent, off-world beings. And this particular person, who's probably still alive, forgive me, but I'm not blowing your cover, giving your name, but she used to also advise the UK government cabinet office as a sort of civil servant type. And yet I met her in a, off-the-record context in which she was sharing that, yes, she had this faculty. Now, these people absolutely believe it 100%, right? I've also met others. I met a wonderful woman from Brazil, where this is a very common belief system, that she was channeling information about how this planet was created. And it was created by a sort of rebel group of angels who broke away from the central intergalactic command structure and created this planet as a sort of place where evil can happen. And they did it as a deliberate experiment to see what would happen. Because everywhere else is pretty good. This was the place they said, no, we'll create a world where evil can happen. And we'll see, how long it lasts, and do people get educated or what. Anyway, she channeled all this information, and Again, I can't vouch for it, but she was absolutely convinced all this was true. And there are thousands of people. I mean, you can look on YouTube every day, people getting messages from this stuff. I suspend judgment on whether it's true or not. I do know the work of John Mack, who was a psychologist at Harvard University, who he was active when I was first active in anti-nuclear Armageddon type research, and he was saying nuclear war very bad for the psyche. People are very anxious about this, and we had correspondence at that time in the late 80s. And then he went into interviewing people who'd had abduction experiences, which is another quite common thing they get in America, especially America, I don't know why, whereby people claim that they've been taken up into a spaceship and they have clear memory and recall, and all kinds of strange things were done to them, sometimes involving surgery and God knows what. And so he interviewed these people, and he let them talk, he filmed it, recorded it, and tried to write it up as a psychological phenomena that was sweeping America. Now, his bosses at Harvard thought this was weird, and they tried to sack him for it. They said, well, you're dabbling in strange stuff, you shouldn't be doing that, you're a proper scientist. He defended what he was doing and said, no, it's because I'm a proper scientist. I'm looking at all this weird stuff. And it went to the highest court of Harvard University, and they found him within his rights to be doing that research, in fact. In fact, it was important research. He never, he never sort of concluded his research. He never said, yes, they're all telling the truth, there are aliens among us. He never said, no, they're all crazy, there are no aliens, it's just fantasy in the mind. He was being a proper academic and looking at all sides of it and trying to gather the information. Unfortunately, soon after that, he had a fatal car crash. And it's tragic, it's sort of weird, because he was a member of the Lawrence of Arabia Society. Lawrence of Arabia is an interesting character himself, who died in a fatal motorcycle accident soon after, he'd done his thing in the Middle East. And this poor chap, John Mack, was on his way to a Lawrence of Arabia conference and crashed and died. And it's just weird that. But so we don't, he ought to be here giving this talk. But anyway, other people have stepped up. We had Carl Sagan, who dead for a while now, but he, in his wonderful series Cosmos, spoke about this. And he said, no, logically, there've got to be other intelligent beings in the universe. Voltaire said that two centuries ago. Jacques Vallée has said that, great French researcher. And it's also in Russia, people have said this. Vernadsky argued the same, Chishevsky and others. And in Russia, there's a whole thing they call cosmism. Russia wants to, explore the universe. That's why they had a space program. And a couple of days ago, we had the celebration of Gagarin's first orbit, which was quite, moving, really. It'd be nice to explore space peacefully, without a resumed arms race. So anyway, there are people like von Daniken and other writers who popularise all this and say, yes, Earth's been visited thousands of times by other beings, and you can see them on the Egyptian temples or the Mayan hieroglyphs. And I suspend judgment. I'm not going to, like John Mack, I'm not going to say yes or no, but I'm going to say it's interesting and worth researching. And that I did meet a chap called Nicholas Pope once, who worked for the Ministry of Defence in the UK. He gave lectures. He wrote a book called Above Top Secret. And he had the job at the MOD back in the 2000s, early 2000s. Whenever there is a sort of UFO sighting in the UK, they ring the MOD helpline and say, help, there's a UFO over my village, send somebody. And they always send somebody to research it, and that was Nick Pope's job. And he told us about 70 or 80% of these things are explainable rationally. They're weather balloons, they're helicopter behaving in a weird way or something. But he said there's about 10 or 20% that aren't ever solved. and that just are still hanging there in the books. Nobody quite knows about them. And it's a good book about Top Secret. So I also met a chap once who worked for British intelligence at one point in his career. He then became a sort of spiritual teacher, and who claimed during his professional career he was taken into an underground base in Colorado, in the American Secret Service places, and shown, craft and stuff that are off-world. I mean, I don't believe he was lying. I think he was telling me the truth. He certainly believed that to be the case. Not sure if he's still alive. Hello, Jeff. Jeff Freed, he was called, lived in London. Greetings. So I think it's interesting, and my take on this is that it would be great to establish contact with intelligent life forms. I mean, I've been looking for them desperately on this planet among these humans. And there are some. They're great. But wouldn't it be lovely to have the first interplanetary philosophy seminar? I'd like to talk to the philosophers of these intelligent races that may be visiting the planet and say, well, what are we going to do to save humanity? Together, And so there's some interesting conversations to be had. Would it rattle and shake and disturb the established religions of the planet? I don't see why. I mean, if it's true, then let's bring it on. What I'm not happy about is if there are aggressive or alien races with evil intent against humanity that wish to either colonize or destabilize the world that we have. It's a beautiful world.
The Hollywood type.
Well, there are lots of films about exploring these things, and often artists and science fiction writers have explored all this. If there are alien forces that are not benevolent, that are meaning ill for humanity, then I think we need to, that's why as humanity we need to come together and solve our differences across all the continents and nations of the world, and have a sort of homeworld planetary defence team. The worst thing we can do is carrying on with our wars like in Ukraine and Israel and stuff. We need to settle all these differences as rapidly as possible and protect this planet. So that's really my take on this very important topic. Any other comments?
There was a recording, a video recording from an American fighter plane that actually had recording of something.
Filmed,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it just sort of disappeared.
Mm.
And I think the American authorities allowed it to be released as a possible UFO sighting.
Yes.
There was an object.
Was that recent or came out recently?
It's a few years ago, a couple of years ago.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, obviously there were hearings in Congress in the last year, and they've released quite a lot of material. There was a congressional inquiry and stuff. I think it's interesting. There are, of course, rumours that some governments have done a deal with different alien forces.
Put one in the White House right now, one of the evil guys.
Well, for instance, the Musk theory is that he is from some kind of weird alien race and really just colonising humanity. He's been sent here to take over. Certainly he's acting like that. And I think these are interesting questions that should be examined thoroughly. And I mean, it's a bit in, when the European powers colonised Africa, this is kind of how they did it. They infiltrated the local